When right-wing politicians and religious zealots spouting dangerous rhetoric and hot-button topics like immigration and gun safety are weaponized, we have to bring a little common sense into the conversations going on in America and around the world. Join Scott Fullerton and his guests as they stand on his soapbox and talk the truth as they see it, and promote the people, the places, and the things trying to make a difference. Now step on up, and let's start talking.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's brand new episode and interview. Today I have a very special guest joining me in studio and jumping on my soapbox with me. He's an archaeologist, environmental scientist, author, and popular science communicator with a great following on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok under the handle Mini Minuteman. The multi-talented and handsome as heck Milo Rossi is in studio with me today. We're going to talk all about his fascinating background that spans the fields of archaeology, environmental science. He's known for some great engaging content that debunks the pseudosciences and some science. And he's known for engaging content and engaging some of his listeners, which I like a lot, that debunks these pseudosciences and educates the public on various scientific topics. He's not only an educator, but also an author. He's penned some great works that explore the intersection of history, science, and the environment. Today we're going to dive into his career, his books, and his lectures to learn a little bit more about his journey and insights. But first, take a look.
Beautiful. I'm going to have you write my biography. That was killer.
There you go. Left out the best head of hair in show business, but I was going to add that, and I didn't.
Giving Fabio a run for his money.
There you go. All right. All right, here we go.
Let's do it.
All righty, everyone. We are back. That was the fantastic Milo Rossi who's in studio with me. Milo, welcome to Standing on My Soapbox. Jump right up and get comfortable, my friend.
Howdy, Scott. It's good to be here. Thank you very much for having me on today, and thank you to all of the listeners joining in, whether you are a fan of mine or a fan of Scott. You know, it's good to have you here, and I'm excited to just talk shop a little bit today, talk about archaeology, history, my experience with science communication, and, some of the good, the bad, and the ugly of what I experience doing what I do.
There you go. Well, I am looking forward to it. I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants here, which I like to do on occasion. My intern, Mary, of course, introduced us. They're a huge fan of yours. And so I got to do a little research on my own. And it's like, this guy is pretty way cool. So I appreciate you taking the time, my friend.
Of course, yeah, it's good to be here. I know. Thank you, Mary, for connecting us. I always I was telling Scott before we started here, I'll get people reach out to me for various things, but I always really appreciate when I get that personalized email that I can tell is from someone who likes what I do and wants to work with me because they like what I do, not just because of, a number of subscribers or something like that. So, Mary, I appreciate you connecting us here, and I'm glad to be in a place to, with people who are on a similar path of mind.
There you go. Well,
yeah.
They're a huge fan. As I said, let's get a little bit of background to start off with for those that might be living under the rock and not seeing all of your great posts that you do on all your different platforms. Give us a little background. Where did you grow up, and what kind of a kid were you? Were you curious about all this stuff early on?
Oh, yeah. Well, great question. I am someone who considers archaeology to be my pretty much longest running interest. I grew up in just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, but my dad grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania outside of Scranton. And so, that's an area of the country that had an immense amount of history with coal mining. It's all, coal belt part of the world. And so I remember going there at about, 4 years old and digging around in the shale piles looking for fossils of ferns from the Carboniferous period. And, well, in a technicality, that's not exactly archaeology. That's more paleontology. It was from, sort of that experience that I got really my first interest in archaeology. I attribute the first real discovery to get me interested in archaeology was Otzi the Iceman, the mummy of a 5,000-year-old ice mummy found in the Alps in northern Italy. He has some of the oldest tattoos in the world, tattoos which I actually got in order to, signify how important that discovery is to me. I learned about him. I remember hearing about him for the first time when I was about 5 years old, 4 or 5, and I was fascinated. And at the time, this is in 2004, 2005, and so we were still kind of working with, proto-internet, and my dad took me to the library. We printed out, everything we could find on their printer, and I remember just poring over the images of it, and I couldn't read anything, but, they'd read it to me over and over. And so that's really where those interests came from. Fast forward, another 15 years. And, you know, I was planning on going out to high school or going to college and graduating high school. And as I was graduating, I was thinking about what I was going to do. I had spent the last 4 years at Evoke Tech High School where I was studying environmental science. And I loved it. I still love environmental science. I am, you know, a naturalist through and through. But I had some advisors who were kind of like, archaeology, like don't bother with that, you know, and I never really, you know, dabbled in it too much beyond just my own personal interest. Then I get to college, I declare for environmental science, and I take an archaeology class with a inspiration of mine, Dr. Dan Sandweiss at the University of Maine, and I reignited that passion for me, and I was like, wait, this guy is making a job out of this. I totally want to do this. So I adopted archaeology into my degree as well, and graduated having studied both environmental science and archaeology. And here I am now doing science communication for archaeology, and, you know, I'd say I'm doing okay at it.
You're doing pretty damn well, my friend.
Thank you.
And let's talk about kind of finding your tribe in this. I mean, we consider different aspects, maybe geek culture. So you have certain different people in different fields that like this. Where did you kind of start finding your tribe and other like-minded people, or have you had to go it alone for a while?
Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. Well, the interesting thing about this job is, you know, regardless of what I do, I do science communication. It's something that I think is a little bit more than just kind of the classic like content creator thing. Not to diminish that, but, you know, it's something that requires a lot of research and, you know, work and things like that. And so I kind of always found that being in that content creator space was rather interesting because most of it is very self-driven. So, you know, while many people will find their tribe in their work, you know, in colleagues and bosses and affiliates and things like that, for me, I kind of built the entire thing off my back. And so there was really no one that I was directly interacting with, like advisors or bosses or deadlines or anything like that. It was kind of just me and my phone and then my audience. And so oddly, I really was able to kind of, you know, pull it up by its bootstraps, mostly by myself. And the blessing from that was then coming across a lot of other creators who, you know, did things, who kind of went down that same path and meeting them after I'd already kind of picked myself up. So a lot of my circle and my you know, tribe, as you put it, are other, you know, content creators who are people who, you know, have kind of gone down that similar path. You know, one that I've collaborated with many times is Lindsay Nicole. She focuses on, you know, paleo biology and zoology and makes some great videos. And her and I have enough of an intersection in sort of the natural history thing that, like, we sort of met through work, you know, work together a lot. People like Aidan Mattis, who do stuff more in like the folklore and anthropology side of things. And so it is kind of cool to get, you know, that little group running as it goes. But really, honestly, the thing that is really the tribe that I feel like has built has been my audience and the people that follow me for my videos. Most of my work in still being someone who is kind of in charge of the whole thing. The thing I'm the most excited for is seeing all of the people that it draws in and people who are inspired by it. You know, when I had I had a PO box open for a little while, and I still remember probably the most inspiring thing that I have ever received was someone sending me a letter, handwritten letter, saying that I inspired them to go back to school for archaeology. And that just like, I could make, you know, get millions of views on God knows how many videos. That will forever be the most inspiring thing I've done. And I've gotten things more like that since. But, you know, I think that really seeing how much it inspires this tribe of people is something that is just, it's worth more than any subscriber plaque could be.
That is fantastic. Talk about the learning curve. I mean, the sciences are very exact, a lot of research involved, a lot of in this, and now you're in this creative space to bring this to. Was there a lot of kind of learning curve in getting the creativity down, or was it as simple as point and shoot and talk about what you love?
Well, you know, Scott, I'm grateful to say that the creativity kind of comes naturally. I'm really grateful that I kind of started off as I did, and I talk to my friends about this all the time. I'm like, I never set out to be a content creator, a science communicator. Like when I first downloaded TikTok, it was because I had a friend who was like, hey, you'd be kind of funny, you should do this. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And then eventually I did it, and I, you know, made some videos just, you know, screwing around. And then eventually I started talking about archaeology, and, you know, it really started to pick up, and this is something I've always been really interested in, and it sort of snowballed. And so thankfully, like, I'm really grateful that things feel like they've developed really naturally, because my goal when downloading TikTok wasn't like, I'm going to become an influencer. So all of the development that did happen just came from my own passion and my own drive and my own creativity. So the creative side, I'm grateful to say, is something that has always been part of who I am, and is always something I will, you know, is very true to me. As for the second part of that question, as to the sort of academic side, that's been a very interesting intersection, because this is something that is rather new, finding that intersection between, you know, of large-scale science communication and like social media content creation, where normally science is something that has been very self-selecting, and it's kind of this. I have no problem, as someone who's in academia, I know that it has a bit of an ivory tower mentality at times, and it can be hard to work your way up those ranks. But now with these tools at our disposal, we are now able to reach huge amounts of people without having to sit them in a classroom, which is amazing because I'm able to communicate with all those people, but is also very intimidating because in the grand scheme of the scientific hierarchy, I'm pretty green. And so, I'm guilty of, making mistakes in my videos and having to correct them later, and, having to really go back to my scripts and make sure I'm saying things that are right. And that's part of the business. Part of the business is acknowledging that I am new here, despite how many, subscribers I have or how big my platform is or how many comments there are. There's a lot of people who spend their lives dedicated to this. And what I try and do the most is to refer to them and to bring them into the fold. And that's something I'm really trying to do a lot more now, is use what I have, which is my, charisma and my platform, to uplift the scientific community and to bring in the discoveries of others and to, platform them in a way that previously academia just hasn't been able to connect with an audience on the scale that we are now. So it's a bit of a balance,
Well, definitely. And it all comes from passion. I think you need to be passionate about your subject. So you had that going into it. You were something that really interests you, and everything else just kind of comes on its own, right? You kind of get that familiarity with the camera and with your audience and start getting those great relationships. What was the first time you kind of thought the science part is really interesting to the general public at large and started bringing in the listeners?
That's a great question. I think, honestly, that was one of the first things I noticed off the bat. So my first video that I ever did to hit 1 million views was on the Dragon Man skull, which is the discovery of a skull that they think is a Denisovan skull in, I think, mainland China somewhere. And they, after this discovery, it kind of resurfaced in 2021, which is when I was beginning on TikTok in the summer. And so I made a video talking about it, and it blew up. It got 1 million views. People loved it. And that to me was really exciting because while that was a video that was laced with my, classic sort of riffs and jabs and jokes and swearing and stuff like that, people loved it. And at the end of the day, I was using that charisma to translate a science topic to people, and they loved it. And so that was really interesting to have, to see people being so engaged by a science topic. And so I kind of realized off the bat that there was a lot of people who are really interested in what I have to say, and especially interested in scientific topics, and that there has been the internet is want for people who are communicating that sort of thing. It was a niche that wasn't really filled, because this was in academic or I guess archaeology academic spaces, this Dragon Man skull was the top news at that time period. And so me talking about it kind of felt like a cop-out. I was like, God, who doesn't know about this? And it was oh man, a lot of people don't know about this. And so it's really exciting to be able to bring all of that to an audience that otherwise just wouldn't be exposed to this information, but they're really interested in it.
And I think it just lends, just like Tyson DeGrassi and everything, people love for that, people that are passionate and have real knowledge that they can share and do it in kind of a fun and engaging way. Mm-hmm. And I think that was maybe the one part that was missing until you came along, was bringing that really fun and excitement and kind of seat of your pants, kind of playing with the medium. And do you feel that you've grown over this time in both your presentations as well as the topics you decide to choose?
Oh, immensely. And it's something that I continue to grow. I recently back last fall, I did my, 1.5 million subscriber video as a celebration. And to celebrate that, it was right after I moved into the new studio. So I was it was a big change in my life. And I went back and I went through all my old videos, and I did a video kind of making a chronology of, from start to where we are now, which was really fun, but allowed me to go back through a lot of my videos and watch them and be oh, wow, look at how far we've come. And, it's gotten even farther now. I started, I was working in environmental science when I started on this job. I was, sampling groundwater on an Air Force base. When I filmed my first video to hit 1 million, I was just sitting in my truck waiting for this well to pump and had literally nothing to do. And I was sitting there looking through articles on my phone. And so that was obviously very, kind of, like you said earlier, flying by the seat of my pants. And now, I'm in a studio. I have, box lights. I have a camera. I have scripts. I have, editors. I have a pretty large production for someone who's, amateur in the grand scheme of things. And that's really exciting. But it's also something that I am a firm believer that, if you're not innovating, you're kind of, you're collapsing. And so I'm always trying to like find ways to really make it something more, but also stay true to what it really is. Because, I've lost count of the amount of emails I've got for people offering, management or agencies and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, like I know that I am more of an asset to you than you are to me. Like I'm doing fine without having an agency. And so I think that, before selling myself to another, entity or, offer myself up to be managed by someone else, I want to just continue doing what I'm doing and find the way to make something that is not only true to what I love to do and what I love to communicate and what my brand is, but also something that continues to work with that group that we were talking about earlier of the audience, the thing that really engages with people. Because if you change too much, you're not what you started off as, and that's not true to you or to your audience. And so I really try to strike that balance of improving but remaining the thing that I always have been.
I love that. I think that's so true. I mean, I've been doing this for 8 years now, and like you, I get these offers 5 times a week. Let me help your Instagram grow. Let me help your YouTube grow. And why aren't you doing more commercials and stuff? It's because I'm doing something I love, and I don't need to do any of that fun stuff, right? I like having the control. Once you kind of get in part of the machine and they'll put the ads in where they want and do things like that. I've never wanted that. I like being the content master of my own destiny. So I love that you do that. Now let's talk about the book. I mean, the Encyclopedia of the Weird and Wonderful, Curious and Incredible Facts that will blow your mind. I downloaded the Kindle. I'm having fun going through it. Some great topics. You're a researcher by nature, just from what you do, I'm sure, and having to go through things. What was it like to be able to find topics for this? And was it things that you keep like a running list? Like I keep a running list of people I want to talk to for the show. You have a running list of topics that kind of hit your hot button from time to time?
Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. I do have a list of, I have notes in my phone that's just this long list of all these video ideas that I have. Whenever something crosses my mind, I'm like, just write it down. Worst case scenario, you don't use it, but like write it down. Maybe you will. But writing the book was a kind of a different can of worms because it has over 100 entries in it. And so writing that, like I had to actually like go and find things to sort of fit within the categories and chapters that we had, assembled. For those of you that don't know or haven't read the book, it goes through sort of my thesis for it was trying to go through a human life cycle. So it starts with a chapter on birth and early childhood, and then there's a chapter on like toys and education, and kind of goes through it. And then it ends with death. And within each one of those chapters, it talks about, various examples of that category from various points in time from all over the world to show that really we are all, part of one big human family that has been living kind of the same way in the same cycles for tens of thousands of years. And so going through that was really interesting because not only was it sort of a research challenge to, find things to work within all of those parameters, but it was also a really fun exercise for me to sort of broaden my horizons and look into parts of the world that I really admittedly don't know that much about. A lot of archaeology is something that really focuses in on a specific region, time period, and like, even material. Like there's, archaeologists who are like, they will look at just like some like the fabric or like textiles from this part of the world in between these like 50 years, and that's like what they do, and they know everything about it, and it's really impressive. I haven't gone for like my PhD or my doctorate or anything like that, so I haven't really declared an exact specific part that I'm kind of going to focus in on. But I kind of ran into that issue that I think every academic does of the world is just an enormous place. And so even as someone who hasn't declared, there was lots of parts of the world that I just didn't know much about. So I really kind of tried to focus in on places like that. Like I personally don't know a lot about like East Asian history and archaeology. So I tried to like pull in some stuff about that. I also tried to use this as an opportunity to represent what I view as a very under discussed part of archaeology, which is North American archaeology. In living in a country that is a colonial country, there has just been a shocking destruction of indigenous sites to the point where we almost don't think of this country as having archaeological ruins in it. When, the Mississippi River Valley had the 10th largest city in the world. It was bigger than London at the time that like the Cahokia Mound complex was, I think it was the Cahokia Mound complex. But either way, there was like civilizations here that have been kind of, bowled over as, Manifest Destiny occurred. So it was a useful platform for me to really talk about some parts of the world that I think are kind of underrepresented in sort of archaeological discussion.
I love the way you say that. That's great. I like the diversity of it. I mean, everything from, like I said, the early ages to the rituals and things that were going on to sexuality. I mean,
Yeah,
I learned about trans is a huge issue right now. My audience
yeah,
is probably 60% LGBTQ. Trans is a huge issue, and learning about the Hindus and what that was about, and their people there was kind of amazing to see. Then, like I said, through fashion and other things. I mean, you
yeah.
really kind of an in-depth issue. I really loved your concentration and your diversity for it. So well
Yeah,
on you, man.
totally. I appreciate that. And yeah, that was a chapter that I really thought needed to be in there because I think especially in the climate that we're in right now that is so, fearful of expression and sexuality and things like that, that it's important to be reminded not only about, it's honestly an extension of sort of talking about all those cultures that aren't really represented. It's talking about the fact that we have been the same for all this time. All of the ways that we express ourselves have existed for all of this time. And for almost all of the time, it has been something that has been glorified. It's been something that has been, celebrated and something that people have been allowed to do. And it's only sort of in the modern, way and climate that we are now that a lot of that is really vilified. And so I think it's really important because without that perspective, people may think that this is the norm. And like, this is not the norm. Like most cultures around the world did not do this. Like, and obviously there are many things that they did that were different or worse or better. But like, as far as, sexuality and human expression, pretty much everyone else got it. And so I think it's really important to put that into, writing so that people can have that perspective. Because without that perspective, it's very easy for people who have never had that opinion challenged to think like, oh, this is the way it's always been. This is the way it's going to be. And anyone who's trying to challenge that paradigm is someone who is like, going against tradition or going against like our core values. And it's like, no. Like you're new to this. Like I promise you, people have been doing this a long fucking time.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
I love that. How do you recharge your batteries? How do you find the time between actual field work, writing, doing this online presence? How do you find that good mix? Are you able, have you mastered that yet? Is it something you still work with or talk
God,
about that?
no. I am terrible at that. That might be the thing I'm the worst at. I have god awful time management skills in the sense that I just literally never sit still. Like I do not know how to rest. I do not know how to stop moving. If I'm not working on one thing, I'm working on another. If I'm not working on work for YouTube, I'm working on my house. I'm doing a preservation of a historic home, the place that I'm in currently, and so like I'm working on that. And so like I am chronically bad. My partner, she, God bless her soul, is always trying to be like, okay, Milo, you've worked for like 10 hours today. Why don't we like stop now? Why don't we have dinner and like watch some TV or something? And I'm like, chomping at the bit, sitting there like I'm tweaking. And that's something I'm still trying to work on. But it's a blessing and a curse. The curse is obviously like I burn out really hard, and normally we'll just deplete the battery to zero before I'm able to actually recharge it, which is a pain. But the blessing of it is the fact that it has allowed for that creativity to flow, and it's allowed me to build what you see before you. And so there is something nice about that. And at the end of the day, no matter how tired I am, I can sit down and be like, hey, look what I've done.
There you go. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, talk about your partner for a second. How do you balance that work-life business? Something that she likes to be involved in? Does she know, oh, Milo's in a zone, time for me to go do some gardening or something, or go to my job, or what? How do you guys work that balance between your passions? What's she passionate about?
That's a great question, Scott. So her and I we are actually looking to do a little bit of work together in the future. So she's a biologist. She's a phenomenal artist. And we've actually done a little bit of work together. She had a beautiful hoodie design. She's done some clothing design, and she did a hoodie a little while ago that I wore in one of my videos. And it was not a large produced thing. It was for a class she did. And people were like, wow, that's the coolest hoodie I've ever seen. And so I talked to her. I'm like, do you want to like market this? She's like, I never really thought I'd be able to market it, but like, sure. And so we marketed it, and it sold great. And so she was like, oh, damn, I can actually like do this. And so that's been really exciting because, both of her parents are artists. And so she's sort of grown up seeing the way that, artists can sort of be taken advantage of in the world. And so despite being someone who's really into art, she sort of steered away from it when she was going into her, studies and things. And obviously, mostly because she really wants to be a biologist, or she is a biologist. She's now degreed and out of it. But like she really likes that side of things, but always kind of steered away from art a little bit just because of the climate that, artists have to work under. But so it's really exciting to really find a way where hopefully we're going to be able to find this balance between her being able to do that artistic side of things and also do science communication. Her minor is in science communication. It's actually how we met. And so, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that develops. I know she wants to do some stuff talking about, chemistry and biology, and she's really into ichthyology and fish. And so I'm hoping to be able to, hopefully maybe we'll have a little science communication power couple.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Do you have a particularly interesting or surprising discovery you've made, either during the research of your book or just actually doing your work? What stands out to you as one of your proud moments of really kind of finding something you might not have learned about, or something you were excited to share with people?
Wow, that's a phenomenal question. I'd say, in this case, the term discovery is something which can have a pretty big, brushstroke. Is it a video? Is it something I came across in writing? Maybe I'll give two. I'd say if I were to go down to to a large degree, like a discovery, I would say that the thing that I've really enjoyed the most has been being able to go in person to sites and bring those sites to people in their living rooms who wouldn't be able to view them otherwise. I think that accessibility is something which is really challenging to have in the scientific world. As we talked about earlier, a lot of scientific discoveries are relegated to, academic papers and to, classrooms and things like that. And as I said, I don't know if you are familiar with my presentation I did at Virginia Tech back a few months ago, but I posted that online. And one of the things I talk about there in my science communication lecture is how, a normal college classroom maybe has, 100, 200, maybe 300 students in it. But we now have classrooms that you can put 1 million students in, you can now put these videos out where everyone can learn about it. And so really, I'd say the great discovery that I've made has been being able to, broadcast that to that many people, that our classrooms are enormous now. I can digest a scientific paper and then, mama bird it to 1 million people so that they can understand it. Because it sucks. I'm an academic. I went through, 4 years of university, 4 years of Voctech school, and I hate reading scientific papers. It's awful. And I don't blame people who especially haven't been trained in it to you read the abstract and you're like, whoa, never mind. I'm going to go, listen to something else. And so it's really nice to be able to digest those and then present them to an audience. So I'd say large scale, I'd give that. Now, if I were to give discovery, when I think discovery, I think, Indiana Jones, the Ark of the Covenant or something like that. Probably my greatest one was when I was at Karahan Tepe, which is currently the oldest known settlement in the world. It dates back almost 12,000 years. And it's still, or at the time that I was there, I think it might be opening up now, but at the time I was there, it was still closed to the public. It was still being excavated. And me and my crew were able to go and film there. And while we were there, we were walking around with one of the men who had his family had worked that land forever. They didn't know that was, well, they knew that it was under there, but they didn't really know what it was. They'd find stones sticking out. And as we were walking, I looked down, one of our guests looked down kind of through the dust in the sediments, and he pulled out a perfect, beautiful flint hand axe. It was one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen in my life, in this little wash where someone had been digging and moving stuff to the side. And holding that in my hand and realizing that I was probably the first person to hold it in 12,000 years was one of the most powerful moments of my entire life. It was magic. And so that I would say, as far as a single discovery, that was I will remember that for the rest of my life. It was amazing.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And that's really, as you started out saying in the beginning there, I love that accessibility. I did look at the Virginia Tech thing, and that was one of your caveats. I'll come and talk, but I want to be able to share this with the masses. And I think that's so important that you do things like that. What kind of role do you think social psychologists are going to think about all the social media communication years from now in the future? Where do you see all of it going?
Well, it's hard to say exactly where it's going, but looking at it right now, it's again, I know I used this idiom earlier. I'm a sucker for my figures of speech, but it's a double-edged sword. It is both the greatest and absolute worst thing we have ever created. It is amazing when you get someone who is a great orator, a speaker, an educator, a leader, to get up in front of the camera and teach about things and teach the truth and teach facts and relay and connect with a huge audience. But You can also get someone else getting up there to, do the opposite of that, who is, spreading disinformation, who is spreading misinformation, who is intentionally pointing fingers at people and, sowing the seeds of dissent. And so, I'm not a social psychologist, so I don't know exactly what they'll say, but I have a hunch that, unfortunately, it's always sort of the dark undertone that ends up getting talked about a lot more in future classes. And I don't think that it is going to be an easy thread to miss when it comes to, social media and large-scale communication that we have today.
I agree completely, and I think you handle it deftly. I mean, like I talked about in the intro, you not only kind of bring things to the forefront, but you also challenge other people. And I think that's important. Everyone's trying to get their 5 minutes of fame when they have an access to the camera, and so they'll say things that a lot of times aren't true. We're finding this in politics, we're finding it in sociology, we're finding it in archaeology. What was the first time you decided, I think I need to challenge this? What brought that about, and what was how does that kind of relate to the work you do? How are you able to kind of keep that with the science, but also like, hey guys, let's get a little real here?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thankfully, that was also something that sort of developed naturally. One of my first videos I did on TikTok, I remember, because I liked all these history things that were coming up, my algorithms would suggest things like that long before I was intentionally making videos. It took about 2 months before I really started making content on TikTok. Before that was just me kind of screwing around. But I remember getting some of these pseudoscience TikToks that I would still kind of react to all the way up until the present. And I made my first video on it. It was some guy talking about how every culture around the world has images of the apple and the snake. What does it mean? Is it a UFO or something like that? And I was like, who the fuck is you gotta be kidding me with this. And so I made some stupid video where I went in on him and I was like, every culture around the world has statues where it's a guy's junk hanging out. What does that mean? And so I was obviously taking the piss out of him. It was stupid, but I didn't make an argument. I was just being an asshole, But all of that is to suggest that from pretty early on, I was like, there are just some clowns out here who are just saying dumb ass stuff. And most people don't believe it. But the people that do believe it end up getting more entrenched when they hear stuff like that. And with how much of it is being produced, it just muddies the water so much that it's if you get inundated over and over and over again with the same people or with different people saying the same stupid things, eventually you kind of start to believe it. And there's not enough people doing actual archaeology and actual science communication. So those are the only people you're hearing science communication from, if you even want to call it that. So eventually you're well, that's kind of the only place I'm hearing it. Maybe the apple was a UFO, So, that is a bit of a difficulty of it. I think there was more to that question, but I've gone on a bit of a tangent. Let me know where else I should go with that.
I think you handled it deftly there, and I like the answer there. And I want to talk about, I think that's part of the believability too. It also you have to be, you want to make this successful, you also have to be a little bit of entertaining for people. I mean, you don't want it to be a dry subject. And I think when you get into those things, it kind of brings the real you and brings you a little personality driven. It could be about a topic, but it also brings that personality. And I think we're searching for that as much as we're searching for truths and fun and information. We're also looking for those personalities that can deliver it in a digestible way that's a little fun as well. So you do that.
Yeah, and it's a challenge because in sort of what we were talking about earlier of trying to refine the brand and where do you see it going and how is it going to change? I got my start doing that on TikTok and sort of going in on the conspiracy accounts and the pseudoscience accounts, and that's why people really ended up following me for what I do. Is they love archaeology, but mostly it was personality. It was this guy is funny, he does funny things. Yeah, I'm an archaeologist, I'm a natural historian, but my primary thing is I'm kind of a comedian. That it's edutainment. It's it's like covering a when you got to give your dog medicine and you cover the pill in peanut butter. It's like that. So I'm covering the pill and peanut butter where I'll make these topics fun and engaging, and I love doing that. I don't mean that to sound like punch down. But with that comes this whole kind of my own personal sort of issue with the way I present my content, and I love doing it and it's great, but I can only do it so much. I really haven't posted a TikTok in 2 months now because I'm there's always going to be stupid people, and at the end of the day, how many minds am I changing by just dogpiling someone, And so that's something that I'm really trying to reflect on and try and find a way to improve because if there's one thing I really don't like on the internet, it's sort of like the commentary channels. And I can kind of parse mine out from that because like mine are pretty well researched. Like I actually am presenting a topic. Even if I'm talking about someone else, like it's still like a topic that I have to go in on and research and present facts. It's not just like opinion about why this guy sucks. But I sometimes sense the undertones of that in my videos, and I really don't like it because I'm like, this is just easy. Like anyone can look at this person and be like, you're a dumbass, and then, like go on to the next thing. So I've really been trying to figure out how to refine my content going forward to be a little bit less of that, because I feel like I just identify with it a little bit less now. I feel like I kind of want to, start to move past it. And also like, I'm making this video right now on this, Philip Ziva debunked. It's like, a 4-hour thing. I have the second episode. It's 2 hours long, coming out in hopefully this weekend. And it's a really fun video, but it is like my classic TikTok content where I'm like, I give all the facts, but then of course, I get some good punches in there. And like, it was really fun to do, but I sit back and watch it and I'm like, if I was this dude, like this would fucking suck. Like I would hate to have this video made about me where it's just this dude being like, here is 4 hours of why you're an idiot. And like, I love doing it. It's fun. I know. And I also know it's what engages with an audience. And that's the really difficult part about YouTube and content creation. And I don't think like the audience really thinks about that much is I'm working a very unique job where I don't get like a salary at the end of the year, or I don't get like an assignment of things I need to do. Like the amount of money I make and how well I'm able to sustain my business and pay my team is directly contingent, not on those numbers, but on how many views I get. And so if I'm making something that isn't getting views, I can't sustain what I do. And so the really difficult part for me has been the kind of unfortunate realization that the thing that people like the most is when I'm just wailing on someone. And so it's this really delicate balance where I'm like, I don't really feel gratified doing this, but also it's what I have to do to keep the business running. So right now I'm kind of in this flux point where I'm trying to like figure out how hard to go on that and then how much to pull back and how to like bring that charisma to other points. Things like Awful Archaeology are a perfect example of that because I still get to talk about a topic. I still get to like make all my jokes and jabs, and that's like the YouTube series I'm the most known for, but it's not going after an individual. And once you start to go after an individual, it's something that ends up just becoming really reactionary. When I did my Ancient Apocalypse series, it's exactly that. I still get pseudoscience, Twitter all up in a fucking, a stink because of, I'm going after an individual and his ideas, where with Awful Archaeology, it's like the Baghdad battery. Here's why it's not here's why it's not like, an actual battery. And, I can make all my funny jabs, but there's no person, there's no figurehead that I'm going for. So that's a long-winded way of saying I'm trying to figure out what that balance is going to be, because I really don't find that sort of content as gratifying as I once did.
I hear you, but it is fun. I have to tell you.
Boy, is it!
We gotta start wrapping it up. I mean, I saw your responses to Donna and to this guy, so I'm looking forward to part 2. So I am looking forward to this stuff. We got to start wrapping it up. Let's finish up with 3 questions here. How do you keep yourself from burnout? Because like I said, I've been doing this for 8 years now, and there's days where I just don't feel like getting in front of camera or talking to anybody. How do you make it interesting to you and keep you motivated to get in here? Like, say you haven't done a TikTok for 2 months. Sometimes it's just, I don't want to talk to anybody. How do you keep yourself motivated?
Well, Scott, that's a great question. And, I hate to say I'm probably the worst person to give advice there. As I said earlier, I am just like, I'm a bull in a china shop. But one thing I've been trying to get better at doing is really just listening to myself and what I need, and to like, my body's rhythm. Like if there's a day where, I'm sure you have these, everyone who's listening has these, where you sit down in front of your computer and you're just like, nothing, like no thoughts. And you're like, I just can't even like get anything done. I will just get myself really frustrated if I sit here trying to get work done and I don't get anything done. I'm like, is there anything I need to get done today? Like I sit down, I'm like, is there anything that if it's not done by tonight, like it will be a problem? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And I'm like, okay, I'm just not going to be able to be productive today. I'm going to just get really frustrated if I try and get work done and I can't. Close the laptop, go downstairs, hang out, go for a walk, take a piss, whatever you need to do to get your head back in the game. And so I've been trying to get better at that.
Tap a tree, make some maple syrup, have a good afternoon.
This guy gets it. God, we have way too much maple syrup, so maybe that'll be my next endeavor. I'll become a sugar cat.
What do you know? You have the lovely lady of yours design the packaging, and you'll have a whole new business in front of you.
You got it. Entrepreneurship.
All right, well, let's you have this platform here, Standing on My Soapbox. Let's talk about a little bit of advice you might give to some aspiring scientists and communicators that want to follow in your footsteps. What is something you've learned about yourself that have made this journey both doable for you, both enjoyable for you, and maybe enjoyable for your watchers, listeners, content watchers.
Totally. Well, for anyone who's kind of interested into, getting into this sort of space, I could not encourage you to do it more, because we need as many people as we can. Like, there is plenty of stupid stuff out there, and we need a lot of just smart people who are inspired and fired up to get out there and just make content. Just inspire people like you have been inspired by listening to this, like you have been inspired by a teacher, or like you have inspired others, a friend, a sibling, anyone. Like, you can get out there and you can do the same thing. And the biggest piece of advice that I can give is just do it. Like, don't overthink it. Don't second guess yourself. Don't sit there being like, well, I'm not a content creator, so like I can't do this. I wasn't a content creator either. I was working doing groundwater sampling, sitting in my truck, and now I'm sitting here doing this. So like, I kind of had this misconception growing up that I'm like, all these people who are like, YouTubers and TikTokers and all that, like, that's their job. That's what they do, and they set out to do that, and I'm doing a different thing. No, like, anyone can turn into this. Anyone can dedicate time to it. Start on TikTok. It's a great way to just drum up a bunch of, interaction and have a bunch of people. It's like your advertising platform. YouTube is a better way to make money. There's really no money in TikTok, but like, TikTok is the best billboard you could possibly have. So my piece of advice is, don't second guess yourself. Don't doubt yourself. Just download TikTok and make a video. Make as many as you want, and just believe in yourself. That's my advice.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Remind everyone where they can find your amazing books and where they can follow you on social media and all your channels.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott. Once again, my name is Milo Rossi. You can look me up on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube at either Milo Rossi or Mini Minuteman. I make videos on, I'll be the first one, 1.8 million subs. I got, videos on archaeology, pseudoscience, pseudohistory, all of that stuff. My book, The Encyclopedia of the Weird and Wonderful, is available now. You can Google that. You can find it on Amazon, but preferably try and get it from someone else. Barnes & Noble. You can get it from the Quarto website, who's the publisher that I work with. And you can even special order it to your local bookstore if you really want to support a local business. So prioritize that if you can. I suppose I'd like to thank you all very much for listening. Scott, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure being here. I guess that's kind of all I got.
That's enough, my friend. I've had an enjoyable conversation. Thanks so much for sharing. We're going to do a fun 5 questions with Milo, so look for that. We're going to have that added on there. And I appreciate your time. I mean, as I said, I think you have the best head of hair in archaeology. It's been a fun interview. We had a good chat. And be sure to look for these books. And like I said, if you can support a local bookstore, have them ordered for you, that's an amazing thing. We'll see you next time right here as we stand on my soapbox. Milo Rossi, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Scott. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us as we stood on our soapbox this week. Tune in every Friday for more straight talk about issues we care about. Be sure to follow Left of Straight Podcast and give this a thumbs up on YouTube or a 5-star rating on iTunes so others can find us. Thank you for listening and have a great weekend.